Session 4-3, 7th December 2022. Session 4-3, 7th December 2022. We continue with the 6th and 7th Surah of Surah Fatiha. Give us the right path, the path of those whom you have rewarded, not the ones who earned your annoyance, that is Christian, Jews, nor those who went astray, that is Christians. Amen. We continue with our series of Quran, exegesis of Quran explained in brief by ex-Brigadier Mustansir Billah. Exegesis of Quran explained in brief by ex-Brigadier Mustansir Billah. Continuing since yesterday, then there was a big bang, secondary separation, which resulted in the formulation of galaxies. These then divided to form stars, planets, the sun, the moon, etc. The astrophysicists hold that the origin of the universe was absolutely unique, and the probability of it occurring by chance is zero, and the probability of it occurring by chance is zero. Now, the Quran mentions of this phenomena regarding the origin of the universe. This is Surah 21, verse 30. أَوَلَمْ يَرَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَنَّ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ كَانَتَا رَتْقًا فَفَتَقْنَاهُمَا وَجَعَلْنَا مِنَ الْمَاءِ وَكُلَّ شَيْءٍ حَيٍّ أَفَلَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. Translation to Surah 21, verse 30. Don't the unbelievers know that the skies and the earth were once one mass, as one unit of creation? We then split them asunder. Yes, the disbelievers do know about this Big Bang phenomena. Unfortunately, however, they are not familiar with the Quran. They have greater faith in their own discoveries than the word of Allah. Surah 36 Yasin, verse 41. وَآيَةٌ لَهُمْ أَنَّا حَمَّلْنَا ذُرِّيَّتَهُمْ فِي الْفُلْكِ الْمَشْحُونِ. Translation: And yet another manifestation for them of the prowess of the Rabb is how we carried their race through the flood in the laden ark, carrying the children and the old and pair of all birds and animals. With reference to Noah's ark, Allah reminds the mankind of his great favor of providing the wood, that is boats, and other vessels with buoyancy that floats, carries the mankind, and transports the heaviest, and the boats and other vessels with buoyancy that float, carry the mankind, and transport the heaviest of loads through flood rivers, canals, and oceans. Yasin 36, verse 4-2. وَخَلَقْنَا لَهُم مِّن مِّثْلِهِ مَا يَرْكَبُونَ. وَخَلَقْنَا لَهُم مِّن مِّثْلِهِ مَا يَرْكَبُونَ. Translation: And we created for them, enabled them to prepare and use other boat-like things, vessels, crafts, other boat-like things, vessels, crafts, etc., which they mount, use for traveling and transporting. Man's misery can easily be visualized if he had to live in a world without buoyancy through water, if rivers and seas were non negotiable, if fishing could not be effectually prevalent, and if nothing could float in the flood waters, and water obstacles were absolute barriers. It is Allah, Surah 45, verse 12 narrates, it is Allah who has subjected the sea to you, that ships may sail through it by His orders, bounty, and that you may be grateful. Surah 45, verse 12 reads, translation, it is Allah who has subjected the sea to you, that ships may sail through it by His orders, bounty, and that you may be grateful. Yasin 36, verse 43. وَإِنْ شَاءَ نُغْرِقْهُمْ فَلَا صَرِيخَ لَهُمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَنْقَذُونَ. If we intend, we can sink, drown them all. If we intend, we can sink, drown them all, and there'll be none, no Messiah at all when they implore for help, and no one to rescue, bail them by overmatching the Rabb, the all omnipotent. Yasin verse 44. Illa rahmatam minna wa matan ilahin. But because of our mercy, we fend off troubles in the seas in the ordinary way and help them to live up to the appointed time. And help them to live up to the appointed time. 36 Yasin verse 4 5. وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ اتَّقُوا مَا بَيْنَ أَيْدِيكُمْ وَمَا خَلْفَكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. The fact Allah assists man to live up to the appointed time makes the disbelievers arrogant, self-indulgent, and fanatically disobedient. And fanatically disobedient. And when they are warned, asked to save yourselves from what is coming ahead, the day of accountability, and from what you have left behind, that is, your evil deeds, so that Allah takes mercy on you. Contrarily, they display blatant effrontery, shameless rudeness. I repeat, and when they are the translation, and when they are warned, asked to save yourselves from what is coming ahead, the day of accountability, and from what you have left behind, that is your evil deeds, so that Allah takes mercy on you. Contrarily, they display blatant effrontery, shameless rudeness. Yasin 36, verse 46. وَمَا تَأْتِيهِم مِّنْ آيَةٍ مِّنْ آيَاتِ رَبِّهِمْ إِلَّا كَانُوا عَنْهَا مُعْرِضِينَ. And so there is not a single translation, and so there is not a single revelation from the revelations of their Rabb, which they do not transgress, disobey. Nothing is effectual with them, for they remain negatively preconceived. Nothing is effectual with them, for they remain negatively preconceived, and they give reasons for their disobedience. And they give reasons for their disobedience. Yasin 36, verse 47. وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ أَنفِقُوا مِمَّا رَزَقَكُمُ اللَّهُ قَالَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَنُطْعِمُ مَن لَّوْ يَشَاءُ اللَّهُ أَطْعَمَهُ إِنْ أَنتُمْ فِي ضَلَالٍ مُّبِينٍ. Translation, for example, when they asked, spend some on fellow human beings in alms and charity of what Allah has provided you, The disbelievers retort the believers. Should we feed those whom Allah would have fed himself had he so desired? They say, you are obviously clearly mistaken. Beware, they continue. You are obviously clearly mistaken, wayward from the right track. The disbelievers inadvertently convey their belief that Allah is the sustainer and not any other associate like angels, idols, Jesus, etc. However, in an odious, hateful mania of controverting the inescapable truth and with an intrinsic defiance of Allah's directions, they overlook that Allah feeds His entire living creation, birds, animals, insects, reptiles, and all living things in the oceans directly. There are no poor or rich among them. However, in an odious, hateful manner of controverting the inescapable truth and with an intrinsic defiance of Allah's directions, they overlook that Allah feeds His entire living creation, birds, animals, insects, reptiles, and all living things in the oceans directly. There are no poor or rich among them. It is only with the mankind that Allah has desired social and economic codes of conduct. People interact with each other so that men are put to test. 36 Yasin 48 وَيَكُونَ مَتَى هَذَا الْوَعْدُ إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. Further addressing the Prophet ﷺ and the believers, these numbskulls, the disbelievers of the hereafter, say, inquire tauntingly and satirically, when do you think will this promise of resurrection actualize? If you are so truthful, they say, till then, let me joke around. Till then, let me joke around. Yasin 36, verse 449. ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يقسمون. In fact, they are simply awaiting just a single terrible sound blast. Translation. In fact, they are simply awaiting just a single terrible sound blast, the first great bugle at the zero hour, which will grip them, pulverize, annihilate them when they'll be busy fighting each other, when they'll be busy fighting each other. Yasin 36, verse 50. فَلَا يَسْتَطِيعُونَ تَوْصِيَةً وَلَا إِلَىٰ أَهْلِهِمْ يَرْجِعُونَ. The mankind at that hour would instantaneously be as if just extinguished. The mankind at that hour would instantaneously be as if just extinguished. Then neither would they have time to make a will, nor be able to return to their families. Elaboration. The human dead would lie scattered like moth. This would be followed with a period of cold winds, storms, and rains on the earth. The light of the sun is arranged through a chemical process on its surface that is taking place continuously. It will come to an end on the doomsday when the sun would first be totally extinguished. When the sun would first be totally extinguished and then fission out and fall when what the astrophysicists call the second great Big Bang will occur. When the second great Big Bang will occur. Quran, Surah 82, verse 1 and 2. when the universes split on the orders of their master, Allah the Almighty, when the will of Allah, the galaxies and planets disintegrate, for these are all bound by the desire of their mighty Lord. For these are all bound by the desire of their mighty Lord. Elaboration. After the first great beagle, the winds, storms, and rains would be used to recollect, reassemble the dispersed constituents, particles, ashes, etc., of every man's body, for Allah sees where every particle is dispersed. If he had so desired, he could adopt the apparently easier course as per human intellect and effectuate man's resurrection using other particles and dust. But mankind would be exhumed, dug, dug up from the graves as trees using the same recollected dust, particles, ashes, etc. At the same time, the entire universe would be reshaped into the gardens of heaven, the fierce hell, and the stressed out earth to accommodate the entire mankind for accountability, and the stage set for the second great beagle, and the stage set for the second great beagle. Yasin 36, verse 51. نفخ ونفخ في السور فإذاهم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون. And then the second translation, and then the second great beagle would be blown. All souls would re enter the bodies instantaneously. All souls will re enter the bodies instantaneously. Then, no wonder they would instantly stand alive. And then, no wonder they would instantly stand alive from the graves, ready to converge towards their Rabb. They would stand alive from their graves, ready to converge towards their Rabb. Mankind would yet be gathering feet and trying to adjust and orientate itself to the absolutely draconian new environment, when the earth would suffer unimaginably severe, repeated earthquakes and swinging jolts, which will foment scares and send shivers through the marrow. The earth would push out all its minerals and treasures. 36 Yasin 52a. Kalu Yavalana Mambasana Mimmerkadana. Lamenting, they would say, Oh, curse us! Who has raised us from the graves? Lamenting, the translation, lamenting, they would say, Oh, curse us! Who has raised us from the graves? Elaboration. They would feel they were better off in the grave. The earth would also throw out the bodies of those who had died at a time closer to the first great beagle. Mankind that had decomposed, calcinated, or cremated would be raised just as trees grow, would be raised just as trees grow. At the second great beagle, when they'll all be about 35 years old. At the second great beagle, when they'll all be about 35 years old, their souls would re-enter them. Their souls would re-enter them. The earth would display all the earth would display all his deeds to every individual who would be overstrung in utter surprise and dismay and convinced that he is now doomed. The earth would display all his deeds to every individual who would be overstrung in utter surprise and dismay and convinced that he is now doomed. We can realize this when we see the modern technology, how things are reproduced, recorded things are reproduced. I continue. He realized there is no way to evade the tragic end of the elegy, the mournful poem of his life. He realized there is no way to evade the tragic end of the elegy, the mournful poem of his life. Expecting some miracle, he'll ponder what's going to happen next. He'll ponder what's going to happen next. Yasin 36, Surah 52b. Haza mawad rahmanu wa sadaqal mursalun. And here we end after this translation. They'll be told, this is what you had inquired about, as to when would the promise be actualized, if you are so truthful. Verse 48 above. Translation of verse 48 above. They'll be told, this is what you had inquired about, as to when would the promise be actualized, if you are so truthful. Verse 48 above. And then, as a soliloquy, they'd say to their own selves, and then, as a soliloquy, they would say to their own selves, this is it, the doomsday, which the Rahman, the exceedingly kind, had promised, and the prophets had conveyed the absolute truth. And they'll say to their own selves, this is it, the day, the doomsday, which the Rahman, the exceedingly kind, had promised, and the prophets had conveyed the absolute truth. That's the end for today. Please pray for me. Shall meet tomorrow, inshallah. Allah be willing. Till then, please pray for me, ex Brigadier Mustansir Billah.